So I'm Rob. I may have been your TA at some point, so you've probably heard my stupid voice before. If not, I took the game development program at Ontario Tech. I actually still am taking the computer science master's course. I'm taking my sweet time with that. So I'm still a student technically, but I also am a permanent employee at Ubisoft now after winning Next programming challenge last year. Um, yeah, I won Next, so they gave me a 3-month internship for the summer. I basically from the start of the internship was telling my manager that my goal was to stay there, and like keep extending. So what they ended up doing was extending my internship another 3 months because I'm still in school, because they get government funding for interns and students. Um, and then after that 3 months, I pushed to become permanent, and then and then they took me on. So it's been good. I've been on Watch Dogs Legion and Far Cry 6. So yeah, still on Far Cry 6. But yeah, so Spratley and I thought it would be nice to just go through our submissions a little bit and maybe give you guys some tips for next, because I think honestly, like both Spratley and I failed the first time we submitted to next. I think we both tried twice.
I thought Spratley succeeded the first time.
No, I'm a failure.
Shit.
Spratley won the year I failed, and then the year before that Spratley failed, and I hadn't tried. But I think going in, if you haven't tried it before, just going in with the intention to probably fail is totally cool. Like it's fine, and you'll gain some experience and you'll do it. So yeah, I totally recommend it. Even if you don't end up doing a ton of like setup or work in advance, just to try would be good. The first time I did it, I didn't really do anything. So I didn't do anything. I didn't do any setup in advance. I was mostly just like I just did it on the weekend, and my submission was crap. But I still did it, and it helped. I guess Pratley, do you want to do an intro as well before I get into it?
Sure. I guess why not? Might as well bundle them all together. Hello, I am Jacob Pratley. The S, don't ask where it comes from, but everyone calls me Spratley. The year before Rob, I managed to win Ubisoft NEXT 2020, and I am still successfully at the company working on Far Cry 6 as a full-time AI programmer. I entered without intending to win, more or less just kind of as an opportunity to what's the word, enhance my skills, and apparently I did a good enough job that they liked me. I don't know what else to say, and I don't want to keep Rob waiting, so
yeah, I mean, yeah, honestly, it's definitely worth trying. So you should be able to see my screen if you're looking at my live stream. It should be my full screen, right? You guys can see the monkey in the banana, right? Yeah. Okay. So this was my submission. There is music in the back, but Discord's not going to share it, and it doesn't really matter. It is music I made, but it's fine. So yeah, I ended up making 2 levels for the game. The first easy level is just like monkeys. So my year I had to make a tower defense game. So I ended up making Monkey Tunnel, and basically, yeah, you fly this ship. You can put down these little turrets. There's 3. I ended up doing 3 kind of weapon types. So once I get enough money, I can put down a laser as well. These just shoot spheres. Almost everything is just sphere to sphere collision. Even going through these like cubes here is sphere collision. Just because that's all I got done beforehand, so it's just mostly what I use. The only other thing I do is I guess line collision. With the lasers use a slightly different collision. Honestly, the collision is awful. I would probably do it very differently. It's super unoptimized. I think in the spot where the collision is, it's like a bunch of if statements all in one. Anyway, the next weapon is the donut. or the saw, I guess. It might be called donut in the game, or in the code, but it's a saw that follows the player. And then as you upgrade the saw, it like adds extra like donuts that kind of spin around the player. Yeah, my intention originally was to have the saw like sit and then like spin into the lanes in one position. But to test it, I made it follow the player, and I ended up just liking it. So I kept it on the player because it kind of makes the game a little more active. Because you have to like decide: do I want to spend my time
super monkeys?
putting down turrets, or do I want to hit the monkeys? Yeah, and then I think the last feature, I guess, is what'll happen when I die in just a second.
Oh man, it's a boss monkey.
I don't think I'm going to do enough damage to this. Yeah.
Oh no.
Oh, I guess that was the end. So I actually won. But yeah, the banana will come to the center here. If you lose, there's a red monkey head that appears out in the distance and makes its way right to the front, which is actually kind of scary or funny. We did that, and I'll show the other level quick. So yeah, that's the easy level, and then the tough level is actually you have some camera controls, and then the left and right triggers let you move forward and backwards.
I might have considered just having the camera follow the player in this instance.
I'll just let them win again. Kind of makes me a little nauseous, honestly. But yeah, my goal for it was to make it 3D. When I was kind of making the little engine when I prepared, because I mean, at least from looking at Spratley's submission the year before, I figured 3D stands out a fair bit. A lot of the submissions are 2D. So yeah, and there's the monkey.
That's a scary monkey.
So yeah, so that I submitted the code with that, and then other part of my submission, which I have here, is I actually made documentation on the I think it was the Sunday like mid morning afternoon. I actually took like maybe an hour or two to actually write some documentation because I thought it would look good, and they did appreciate it. I think they mentioned it in the next like award thing that they liked my documentation, so it can't hurt. Yeah, so I'm just going to go through it, and then we can just kind of talk about it. If anyone has questions, let me know. I'll try to be quick enough so we don't waste too much time, but just an overview of the game I kind of just gave. I added some controls. But yeah, so the main portion of my code, or like the code I prepared in advance, was from this GTK library. I called it Game Toolkit Library, which is just a static library here. Yeah, so it kind of starts from just a game class. Game classes have a list of scenes. So let me see. Game.h here. No, that's not what I want. I want games. So yeah, so from the game, so this is the game test is the file that they give you for Next. This is where like all their demo stuff is, and pretty much anything they give you or that we care about on the high level is all in there. And I just have it all commented out here just so I could reference it if I needed it. But yeah, so I kind of made a game class that is just called in here. So game init, game start, update the game. I think I changed that so it was just like the numbers were a little nicer for me. Yep, render and shut down. So then the game class holds a list of scenes. So when game init is called, it just adds scenes to the game class, and then whichever scene was added first, that's the scene we're going to use. So you can see the main menu, and then level 1 was the easy level. I think these was the easy level. It might not be actually, but easy and tough levels are in here. I probably should have just named them easy and tough. That would have been better, but doesn't matter. Yeah, and then yeah. So moving on. So scenes. basically provide. So when I thought of this, I had mostly just had experience with Unity, so I was thinking I kind of want just a scene class where I can just have a big setup, like instead of having an editor, which we would normally have to set up a bunch of entities and their components and references and all that stuff. I figured I would just have a scene class that holds all the references to everything, manages all the memory, and then gives me like a nice setup function. So if I actually look at the scenes I used for the game, which I actually did most of my code in the header files, just because I was trying to be speedy. Like I think most of my components, all of my components for everything is just in this one components file. They did ask me about this in my interview, and I just said I just didn't want to deal with, like during the competition, I didn't want to deal with making a bunch of different files to have to sift through. So I just put it all in one file, which normally I would probably just keep everything more modular. But yeah, so scenes. And then in this scene class, this is I think I just collapsed the easy level. But yeah, most of the work that I did during the competition is in this scene setup function. So I create update groups and render layers, the collision groups. So just so I can schedule things a little bit nicer. So like my UI, because I added them to later layers will be rendered last, and that's how you can see the like menu just at the bottom. Yeah, I didn't have this during the competition, but I added like kind of like a flyweight pattern. So all of the models I use, this model class, when the create model is called, it actually grabs the models from a file, saves all their data. Actually, during the competition, each of the renderers read the file themselves. So all the maybe I'll show. Sorry, I'm trying to explain this code. I'm a little all over the place. Let's see. Scene objects. Nah, whatever. I'll stay with scene. So basically, this is what I was looking for. So in the setup class, so I would say an entity, camera, create entity. I add the camera. I think I wanted to make an orthographic camera as well, but I just didn't at some point. I didn't want to spend the time doing it, so I just have a perspective camera. But then in most of the work you do to set up the scene is you add an entity. So this is the parent entity. You can add behaviors. So when you add the behavior, you give it the reference to whichever entity it's for. Add a renderer, and then in here I can make a child entity, and then in create entity you give it the parent. So you can have like hierarchical stuff. So I do have a scene graph. So when you rotate the objects and move the objects, they'll move with their parents. Yeah. So that was basic setup, and then this is a huge function. I think if I would probably modularize this a little bit more, but for this competition, this was fine. So what, like I was saying, so each renderer would actually, in the add renderer call, would open the file and add a new model. So, which is ugly because there's so much more memory. Like every monkey that I have in the monkey object pool has its own set of data for the model. I don't know, it just didn't make sense. So now I just load them all first, and then when it needs a model, a renderer will take in one of these models and you can use it. Camera is actually two entities, just for the two different rotations. Here's where I did the UI. So the backdrop, the money UI icons, I think the wave indicator and like the timer for the next round, HP, tower selection menu, so the little shooter, towers, laser towers, the saw. This is how I made like I made these like path functions. I don't actually know where this comes from, but I made these path functions. So the actual, I guess this is the easy level actually we're looking at right now. So the path for the easy level is just add 3 squares up, then 5 squares to the right, 3 squares down, 3 squares left, and then it just like creates a path. With I'm so used to using Visual Assist now that like I'm trying to follow the references of Visual Assist, but I don't have any of the hotkeys in my personal stuff. Anyway, we move on. Yeah, set up the towers. But yeah, does this structure kind of make sense? Like this is I mean, I could keep going through the scene setup stuff, but I think it's kind of like it does make sense. It was honestly surprisingly easy to work with on that weekend. I think yeah, it was actually pretty quick. I was surprised. I hadn't actually really made a game with any of this stuff until that weekend, and things went pretty smoothly, which is nice. But yeah, the 3 saws. Oh yeah, and then the waves for the monkeys. I did something similar to what I did with the path, where I just have a vector of waves, and then I would add the monkey types, and then this during spawning it would use the vector of waves to spawn each of them. And I think in here I can say how many of that type of monkey I wanted, the type of monkey, and then the delay for spawning between each of those monkeys. Yeah. Player cursor. Cool. So yeah, that's scenes. So yeah, any object in the scene, so like an entity, a behavior, renderer, whatever, they all take from scene objects, or they all inherit from scene objects. So scene objects give like, I had these like, just like a bunch of basic functions you might want to use in a behavior or an update call or something. So like I used the same function for my setters and getters. So you would do like if I just wanted to get the current position or the position, I would just call this, and then if I wanted to set it, I would provide a vector. And these are vectories that I made myself. I just have this big math class that I wrote. Honestly, it's a little ugly. And this was the first thing I did was make this math stuff. And I was learning C++ at the time, so honestly, it might actually be pretty ugly. I tried to use pointer arithmetic, but there might be a better way to do a lot of this. But I didn't use templates or anything. The only I did just use like a macro for the type. So if I wanted to change the type at some point, I could, but I never needed to. Yeah, and I unit tested the math stuff and some of my like scene update things. I pulled in Google Test. So like Google Test just lets you make these like little test functions basically. So I had a vector, I added some stuff, or I added something to it, and then you can say I expect these numbers to be in there. Then you can do kind of more math, and I just tested all my different functions. And then when you actually run this project separately, it just lists all the different tests you have and their names, and then if they passed or not. This was super useful because there were definitely a bunch of mistakes I had added to my math stuff, especially with the matrix classes. So this definitely made me catch all of them. And then at any point, if I needed to change my math, or I wanted to add different functions, or something touched the math, or I also did let's see, so like I tested different component updates and things. If anything changed to the basic scene class, I could just run this again, and if these passed, I was pretty confident that I didn't break anything. It made things very quick for that. Well, and then if I saw that something broke, then right away I knew I had to fix it. So I would totally recommend learning and using Google Test for stuff like that. It was pretty quick too. When I when I wanted to add this, I had planned out a couple days because I thought it would take me a while to learn this, and I think I had it up and running in an hour or so. So it's actually pretty good. I super recommend it. Hogue taught this to us in his debugging class, which I don't think they have anymore. I think they stopped it maybe after the year I took it, which is a shame because it was a really good class. But yeah. Okay, back to this. So entities. For me, entities also hold the transform data, and then like the linked lists to their parents. I think it has like a pointer or a reference to its parent, and then a list of its children, something like that. Maybe a vector of its children. The entities are only creatable within the scene. So the add entity or create entity, whatever it is. Otherwise, I think the constructor is private. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and then I think I also added functionality, and I don't think I used it, but you can disable entities, and then it'll disable all their children. And I think that's something that I unit tested a bunch, even though I didn't end up using it. But that was nice to have in case it. Actually, I do think I use it. I think if an object dies, then I just disable it, and then I reuse them because I also have object pools. But yeah, behavior, kind of just standard start update. I added this trigger. I think I added this trigger call during the competition, but basically another entity with a reference can trigger this, and then it'll trigger that object's trigger call, and you can send in a code. So sometimes, like you just want to have different logic when you're triggering it, so you can just send in a different number, and it'll trigger that object's behavior. That was really useful. And then on collision call, and you get the other one. I did have a bug where I was iterating through all the collisions, and I think I disabled or removed one of the entities while it was iterating through them. And I didn't realize at the time that would ruin the iteration, and then it crashed or something. So I had to change that, but it was fine. Renderers. So I kind of talked about this already. This is where we take the API calls we're given for drawing lines, and then it takes all that vertex model data, like just the vertices that I grabbed from the models, and then draws them with the stuff, and it does all the matrix math for model view projection, which is all stuff I had to learn again before this. I think when I was doing the classes, I think it's maybe second year, we learn all that graphic stuff. I wasn't really a programmer for our team, so it wasn't until a little later that I really got into the programming and all this stuff. So this was pretty new for me, actually. Yeah, and then object pools. So basically, like in the scene setup class or call that I talked about earlier, you just generate pool, and then you can, each of them has like a different type of pool, will have different logic, and then it just spawns a bunch of them, adds behavior, render, collider, whatever it needs. So I think I like spawn in like 50 monkeys or something like that, in that setup call, and then all those monkeys like are reused. I think, let's see. I don't know if that was a GTK class. Does it say game object pools? No. Yeah, so create, generate. So yeah, monkey pool here. Constructor's really ugly, because I think it takes in the monkeys each have reference to like the path, the update group they're on, the render layer, collision group, all that stuff. But then you set it up here. So I say this is the monkey pool. Add the behaviors, renders, colliders that the monkeys need. Their initial positions, if they're active, and they're not, start. So that's where that was actually pretty useful. Yeah, and then I think all of the towers and the lasers and then bullets also have their own pools. Yeah, bullet pool. So like all the different towers just reuse from the same bullet pool. And actually, this isn't something I fixed, but I didn't fix. But if you buy too many towers, then it sells them. They start to disappear because you're reusing towers that you've already placed. So that's something. Yeah. But yeah, monkey path creation I kind of talked about. Waves I talked about. I just added some, just a little bit of. I wanted to put like a state diagram or something in the documentation to show I understood a state diagram. But yeah, that's kind of everything. I know I've kind of just been rambling about all this, but yeah. Does this make sense? Overall, just going through all the code. There's a fair bit. I will say I started that math library that I started with. I think I wrote that in like August before all this. I like the API I'm using here was actually the one from the year before, so I was just working off of it to try to learn C++. My original goal wasn't actually to do it again. I just wanted to get better with C++. But then I started to realize I could just keep working on this engine in my free time here and there. So yeah, it's like a small little engine.
You sorry, press the mute button. You're not using any OpenGL, are you?
Nope.
So, and that's all like done on the
to,
CPU.
even here.
Yep. Yeah. It's literally
that's really cool.
just the line functions that they give you. So I guess it's all immediate, whatever that is.
That's really cool.
Yeah. Let's see. I might probably go to my renderer. Sprite render. No, it's probably in. No, it would be in here, right? I think. Where is it? Renderers. Game renderers. Object renderer. Weird. Maybe it's in components. Oh yeah, and then like I had just added a bunch of macros for the different stats and things, so I could just change all the like balancing and stuff. I think I could just spend hours and hours changing these numbers and it would mean nothing. But yeah, if any questions, let me know. I'm kind of over halfway. Or is this only an hour? Is that usually what it is?
Usually, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not too rigid, but yeah. Does anybody have any questions for Rob?
About the code?
All right, seems like
Cool.
we're good then. Let me just check if people are typing in the chat.
Oh.
All right. Yep, okay, we're good. So if we want to move on to Pratley.
Oh yeah, I do have one more thing. When I started this, well, I know Spratley can go talk about his code, and then we'll talk about a bit more. Might as well.
All right, cool. Again, apologies for my voice. I am sick, but still sick enough to think, I think. Before I get started, I would like to stress that we are not here on behalf of Ubisoft. This is our own personal attachment to GPC and loving you guys, and the things that we say here are not breaking our NDAs.
Yeah. I won't mention job code at all. Just what I was thinking, like while I was doing this. Yeah.
Yeah, legal mumbo jumbo, just as Nick's saying. So the first thing I'm going to do is paste in a link to my year's finalist reel with a timestamp that goes almost directly to my entry. There's a small clip there. For some reason, I can't actually get mine to run, so all we have is a slideshow with a single screenshot and what they have in that video to see what I made. I figured that Rob would be doing a more technical approach to explaining his, so I came up with a little slideshow, and I thought I'd talk more about overall what I or how I approached Ubisoft NEXT. So I'll just give it a few seconds for people to tune into my stream You should see a blue screen that says Ubisoft NEXT not sponsored. And if that is not what you see, then could you please speak up?
You're good.
Okay, good. So I am calling this presentation How to Be Judged, for reasons that will become clear soon. As a quick overview, I would like to introduce my game. I called it Tempest Lanes, and it is a 3D game where you go bowling in space, based on this retro arcade game Tempest. My prompt for my year was that Tempest. We weren't given any more context, assuming, or it told to assume that it was the arcade game and not the Shakespeare play. So I took my spin on it and turned it into a bowling game because, of course, Tempest is played on lanes, and the word association in my mind thought of a bowling alley. This is what the game looked like. So, Next might feel like a game jam or something you're doing for fun, but you can't forget that you are going to be judged for this. In the programming brief, they give a breakdown for the judging, which I have here on the right, and it's been the same criteria as long as I've been aware of the competition. Worth your most points, you have your code's actual structure, followed closely by how ambitious or advanced your program is, and then lastly they throw in a few points for creativity. And before you get concerned, don't worry, artistic merit is ignored by the judges. This is strictly a programming challenge, because if they wanted to hire an artist, they would be looking in the art categories of the same competition. So with this like breakdown that they've given us in mind, that there's, clear and simple structures with future expansion and advanced and well-applied techniques, let's give my game a quick breakdown. For my code structure, I made sure that everything was kept as clean and readable as it could. Object types had their methods clearly named for what they did, and I had them grouped at the top of their header class by functions. So, all the getters were together, all the setters were together. I used getters and setters for every private variable, instead of exposing things as public. Just basic good C++ flow. I've got a picture on the right of this slide showing my header files, and you see I've got things pseudo-organized. My camera class, my game object class, my rigid body object class, things like that. And then the ambition and innovation segments I focused on was having a 3D camera system and physics-based gameplay. And that's it. If you feel like that wasn't enough, then I agree. The breakdown that they give us just doesn't show the full picture of what your submission is, why you're doing it, and what they're really trying to get out of it. It's great to have this breakdown on hand as a way to keep yourself on track, and you can take a step back and ask yourself, is my program meeting all of these bullet points? Because this is, technically what they're judging you on, but it's so vague and general that it doesn't give us a good starting point for the project. So to get a better understanding of what I should do, back in my year, I took a step back and asked myself, why? What's the point of the competition? Why are they judging me? What are they really looking for? And the answer, of course, is that they're looking for a new employee, and they want to see if you'll be good for the part. The competition isn't about making the best game possible, it's a measure of your skill as a games programmer. There's a lot of key concepts in our field that they want to ensure that you know, and your game is a vessel for your knowledge. The judges don't know who you are, and this is your time for their first impression. So, let's break down my game again from the perspective of a showcase of my individual skills. My game included basic C++ and object-oriented techniques like polymorphism. Every object in the scene that I have comes from a root game object class, which contained all the logic that a game object would need, including like what lane it's in, what position along the lane it's in. I made a child class called an icon object because I felt that loading and displaying a line-based sprite for an icon was different enough that it deserved its own class. And this, goes on and on and on. So we ended up with my player class, my bowling ball class, and my bowling pin class. My game included rigid body dynamics to showcase that I was knowledgeable in the world of physics and collisions, that I was able to integrate changes over time. My game included file input and output to demonstrate that I was aware of how to open, read, and write to files using C++, and as well as how to interpret custom file formats. My game included a full 3D camera system to showcase that I was comfortable with matrices, vectors, and some of the basic graphic concepts required to do 3D rendering, like the importance of the clipping plane. And my game also probably included other stuff. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that I see my entry to Next less of as a game and more of a broad showcase of what I know how to do and what I would be bringing to the job if I got in. So just to keep that thought going, I've thrown together a list of things that we should learn at school that you can showcase in your submission. Remember that the judges know nothing about you, and they'll assume nothing. So you have to show them what you know. Stuff like object-oriented programming and its uses, polymorphism, const correctness, pointer workflow, memory management, delta time. I'm just reading off the slideshow at this point. We got multi-threading, system I/O, 3D math, code readability techniques, physics. This list is far from being complete, and brainstorming everything you want to show off is just part of the fun, in my opinion. So feel free to just extend this and try to show what makes you special and what you really know. So as some last thoughts to wrap up, probably the shortest GPC session I've ever done, play to your own strengths. As at the time of entering Next, I was really deep into physics, so I really decided to focus on that for my submission, and that's why my game is a bowling simulator, because I felt that I was knowledgeable enough in it that I could pull it off in the amount of time that we had allotted for the competition to a degree of quality that I'd be happy with. Competence shows through, so don't second guess yourself. Write your code confidently. It may not feel like it, but you are doing it right. Write your resume and cover letter confidently. Speak confidently in your video. I know you can do this because you're all really talented people. They say that art isn't everything in this competition, but a little bribery never hurt anyone. The camera system I implemented showed something radically different. My camera was able to swing, in and out, show different angles of the map, and I implemented it to be an eye catcher, something to give the judges a reason to look at me. And finally, a little polish never hurt anyone, but also don't focus on it, because it's much more important to have something functional than to have something that's really, really, really good. And that is all she wrote, and by she I mean me. I'm not sure what else to say beyond that, but that was a fast move through of my thought process.
Add a little bit. Sorry, I keep interrupting you. On the point of they're looking for another employee, I can't stress enough: be professional. Like this, treat this as a job interview. If that's really what you're going for, if you want to win it, have your resume ready beforehand. Have a cover letter. A website doesn't hurt. I can link the website that I haven't touched it since the thing. It's in the chat there, and I would I called my game Monkey Tunnel, just to theme it, but I would definitely veer away from memes, like making your submission like a joke, or adding weird stuff to the files, or funny names and that kind of thing. I would veer away from that, just because you want it to be professional code and a professional game. Because remember, they're also going to be showing this submission off in branded videos and other things. So your submission just has to be professional. At least look professional, if that makes sense. So definitely don't use any copyrighted sprites or anything like that in it, because they won't be able to show it. Yeah.
So just to drive that point further and get into the final kind of part of this session, as my dog is scratching on my door. I wanted to bring up the topic of personality and soft skills. You mentioned professionalism, but they're also looking for somebody to integrate into their team at the end of the day. And I wanted to pick your guys' brains a little bit as to what you think in terms of your soft skills kind of pulled it in for you.
I can take this if you want, Spratley.
Well, I'd love to hear from both of you, but like,
True. Yeah. I think we're both. I mean, I work with Spratley. I mean, he probably helps me more than I help him, but we message all the time, and I think most of the work I do, at least right now, is communication. Like it's messaging people, like meetings, asking questions. I'm new to the code base, like a lot more new than a lot of the people that have been working on these projects for years. So a lot of my time is spent messaging people what I've discovered, where in the code should I look, what am I looking for, that kind of thing. So in the interviews, they're looking for someone that knows how to clearly communicate issues or challenges that they've faced. They can clearly communicate their code. I know I just like rambled for like 25 minutes about code, and I probably wasn't super clear, but I think the documentation definitely really helps. And I think soft skills wise, kind of being confident and having thought about, like putting thought into some of the things they might ask or what they might be looking for, like in the interview, kind of would help. I think I got a couple technical questions in my interview that were like, what are the types of casting in C++? And I actually didn't know. I didn't have an answer for that, but I wrote it down and I said something like, "But I can learn. Like that's not hard at all." But most of the questions were them asking, "How do you organize yourself?" I had mentioned offhand that I have notes. I had a backlog of things I never got to add to my engine, and then they asked me about my backlog. But I started answering, "Oh, these are the things I have on my backlog," and they cut me off and they said, "No, like what form is your backlog in? How do you take notes? Where are these notes?" That's what they wanted to know. They wanted to know about how I organize myself and how I work. I took the most of the notes on my iPad. I have Notability where I kept like color coded notes in a backlog, and I showed them that, and they liked it. So yeah, that kind of thing. So I would say like communication and organization are big.
Similarly, see, this is a tough question because I don't have soft skills. Similarly, Rob, you mentioned that it's interesting because in my interview, I was also asked about how I, did backlog stuff, prioritization, and I mentioned how I like to do the stuff that we learned in project management class, which was to create a priority matrix of, how important is something versus how hard it is to do something, and that's how you come up with the priority. And they really liked that I said that I did that, because apparently that's how stuff goes at work. Now, I can't confirm or deny that actually is how we do stuff at work, but I guess Ubisoft really values organization, interestingly enough. But one thing that I would say is important, soft skills wise, is to, aside from being able to talk, is to be able to be talked to. A lot of the times when people at work describe me, they use the words easy to talk to, and I'm not sure if that's because there are other people at work who are hard to talk to, or if I am especially easy to approach and bring stuff up with. But like Rob said, at the start of my internship, back when that was a thing, I had a lot of, talking to my assigned mentor, talking to people on my team, where's this file, where is this handled, stuff like that. And it slowly evolved into, people coming to me with those same questions. And it's important to be able to articulate, what you're thinking, and what, of course, I fail to articulate what I'm thinking in the question about articulation, but stuff like that, talking to people is important.
I'm trying to think what other questions I was asked at the time. They also did walk through the project, and other things, but I think communication probably is just the biggest of the soft skills for programmers, at least. Organization second. I mean, a lot of the time you're a programmer, so you get tasks and whatever, so you don't necessarily have to organize yourself at work, but you do. But yeah, any other questions? I guess.
I'm having one of those moments where I also was about to say something, but then realized not sure what I was going to say. But oh yes, that's what it was. Okay, so I guess another thing too that this competition in general, but especially for programming, kind of forces you to do is to read the instructions of what they're trying to ask you and actually give them the result that they want. Which is a huge thing, like being able to actually articulate, or not articulate, but understand what your designer wants, or whoever's asking you for something, and actually giving them what they want. I think that's like one of the most important soft skills.
True. Yeah. I mean, like collaborating with people that aren't in your domain is definitely important. Um, oop, yeah, I'm trying to not talk about work, but talk about work. I think it's important to be able to articulate your work in a way that doesn't necessarily get into the details, but gives someone who's not a programmer the information they need. So let's say if you're talking to a project manager, you have to be able to tell them like how long you think it'll take, what the issues are involved, and often you're a project manager or someone, they might be able to pull in other people that can help. So being able to say I need help from these type of people, but I don't know who to talk to, that kind of thing can help. If that makes sense. Our interviews, I think they were, just looking at the chat, I think our interviews were an hour. And feel free to write just questions in the chat, anyone. We can kind of just answer them. We have some more time. But yeah, I think the interview was an hour. And like it was done right at the hour just because everyone's busy.
Yeah, I don't remember how long was booked, but I remember the actual like interview portion of my interview barely took any time at all, and the rest of it was just kind of vibing with the judges who were interviewing me because we got along really well. Weirdly enough, we were talking about the Lego stuff that one of them had going on behind him. It was a very fun time.
Yeah, mine was a little more intense. I remember Spratley, I remember you telling me yours was very informal. Mine was definitely more on the formal side, I think.
Yeah.
I feel like it was just that year because mine was pretty formal as well. Like they had a whole list of questions lined up.
Yeah, true.
And they were going through the submission.
Yeah, it probably depends on who was interviewing us as well, I think.
Yeah. Well, looking back, one of the people that was interviewing me did end up being my boss for a little while, and he was a very informal person in general.
Right, nice, yeah.
So it was probably just a happy accident on my year.
Is that Rich? Because I had Rich too.
Yeah,
although
Rich
I had two
great.
people.
I'm trying. I had other like suggestions or things I wanted to say, but I don't know. Yeah, I'd be happy. Like if people have questions about their code or whatever they're working on for this, I'd be happy to take a look and give my opinion. But I think what Spratley said was also important. Play to your strengths and work on what you think is important for the project. When I did this and I started with math because honestly I think everyone needs to start with math classes to some degree. Like showing that you understand vector math is pretty important.
Starting with a scene system might not be bad either.
Yeah. I think the math, like you just kind of need it to make a game though. And then the next thing I did, was a scene, some sort of scene game structure. I mean, I did work on mine for a while, and I definitely had more code in my submission than Spratley did. So you don't necessarily need a ton. So it can be a little more simple or structured however you want. But yeah, then I did some sort of scene or game structure, and then I think the next thing I did was a scene graph, like actually spawning in the objects with their renders and behaviors, kind of thing, just so I could have. I don't think a scene graph is necessary, but it definitely helps. And I think it's like I don't know. It was that took a fair bit of time though to learn. So you don't necessarily need it, but yeah. Otherwise, just get some books. I think most of my work was just reading some textbooks, and then trying to
And come
implement.
to GPC.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to see what the game or the task is this year. I know nothing.
I think the other biggest point that that we should drive home is that please don't write like 5 nested if statements on one line or something like that.
Oh, I did that.
Shit, now I gotta rewrite my whole thing.
Let me see. Let me see if I can find my
Just
collision
kidding.
code. That was the only like. Where is that? Hold on.
Okay, how about this? If you're gonna do that, don't make that your entire submission.
Oh, yeah,
'Cause,
no.
if the judges can't read your code, then you're kind of toast.
Yeah, code cleanliness is huge. I probably commented too much,
So
but I would
don't
say
submit the entire thing as rejects. Got it.
I would like comment your code, clear names for everything. I mean, Pratley hit it on the nose really with his suggestions.
I don't remember my suggestions, but I was gonna say, um, code readability is key. One thing that I was taught, I don't remember where, this might be working, it might be secret insider knowledge, who knows, is that we're working with computers that are more powerful than the stuff that got people to the moon back in the day, and code efficiency and optimization is a very niche area nowadays.
Yeah.
You don't really have to make the most performant code, and it's often a lot better to lean into readability. If you can make a function take 2 more clock cycles but have someone be able to look at it and just on the spot understand exactly what's going on, that is a very worth trade-off.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, I wouldn't worry about things like worrying about the efficiency of your virtual functions or like honestly even having a few nested if statements. If you can like comment, like add a comment, this could be optimized or something, just so the judges see that you understand. But like it's a personal project and you're not like making millions of game objects or thousands even, so it's not a big deal.
Okay, that may have been my plan, so I may have to rethink things.
Unless you're going for like specifically going for like a super well optimized game and that's what you want to show off, then sure. But I don't think like unless like that's really what you're going for, you can show like super efficient engine code or something and you want to be an engine programmer or something like that, then sure. But I don't think it's the most important. I think getting something functional with clean and clear structures is the most important.
Well said.
I can't, and as I say that, I can't even find my collision class.
It's been wiped from history. Too many nested if statements.
Apparently.
If we're looking for suggestions, one thing I like to do to make my code more readable is if I have to look at a block of code and think hard about what it's doing to figure out what's going on, then that's the time generally where I just copy that into its own function and name it with what it's doing. So then I can just put in its place, like
Do the thing.
calculate next position. And then it does that. And now I can just look at this function and know, oh, this is for calculating the next position. Anytime I see that function call in the hierarchy in somewhere else in the code, I can immediately know that that's what's going on.
Yeah, and that just in general, you start to create this kind of self-documenting architecture, which not only makes your life easier, but anybody else who looks at your code is gonna be very happy with the fact that they don't have to like do like the mental gymnastics that they would otherwise have to do. Another suggestion that I've actually I learned this from a technical interview. I didn't really know it was called this, but uh, I think they called it like a pure function or like a black box function, where basically you can give the function some input or whatever, but whatever it does, it doesn't actually change that input. It just provides some output. And the advantage of having functions like that in your code, besides also having those like space savers, if you want to call them self-documenting functions, is that you can get the output of something without having to actually change the state. And it can also work in tandem with that like kind of self-documenting style. So you can have like change the position of this, or I don't know if you want something to change a color or something. I can't think of a good example. But you want to evaluate something without changing the state. It's a very nice way to do that.
Nice. That reminded me. Something reminded me, but I remember one of the interview questions I got. It's unrelated, but they asked me why I was making virtual destructors, and what their purpose of it was. So that's something for you to learn. There's some homework. What do they do, and why? Why would you make a destructor virtual? Yeah, I had a few like small questions. I also had like I think my object pools have a pure virtual function in there. So I was asked why do I have a function that equals 0? And I just had to explain what an interface, like I made it an interface just so like it was just so I knew that when I came back to that I had to implement that function. Yeah, small questions like that. I mean, even if though you don't have an answer in your interview, like you're allowed to say I don't know. But like I was taking notes my entire interview, so they saw that like I was taking notes on things that that I was planning to learn in the future, which was good. I think they liked that they saw me taking notes. But yeah, I
All
still
right,
can't find
it's
find my
around
collision
6
code.
p.m. Oh, Jacob, were you going to say something?
I was just gonna say something that I have completely lost now. Oh God. Well, I have another thing. Going into my presentation, I may or may not have watched some long plays of Ubisoft games because I had never played any besides Rabbids Go Home, and it never came up. So, pro tip from me is that they don't care if you've played any Ubisoft games before.
Yeah, I did that too.
Right.
I bought Watch Dogs and Far Cry 5 so I could play it before, and no one cared. No one asked. I think a lot of the people we work with have never played them.
Oh, I remembered finally. It's gone again. No, it's back. Okay. Uh, important soft skill. Going back to the soft skills thing, I think is the willingness to accept criticism and understand that criticism is not what society has made it out to be, and they're not, calling you bad. They're, showing you that there are ways to move forward with your mindset and your future, and they're trying to bring you in that direction. And accepting criticism and listening to what they have to say about your submission in the interview is a really key part of demonstrating that. And then the other thing, Rob was mentioning that they did ask technical questions that sometimes you didn't have the answer for. I had similar stuff to that back in 2020. I had never used a function pointer or a lambda expression or whatever they're called before. And I was asked if there was anything that I was planning on learning in C++, and I brought that up. And it demonstrates that you're willing to learn, because one of the things we do on the job is learn all the time. We're working with unfamiliar tools, we're working with unfamiliar engines, we're working with a lot of legacy code, and it's important to be able to look at something and teach yourself what it is.
Yeah, and I think in my interview they asked me something maybe like what would you have improved, or like what would be your next step on this project or something. And I think I brought up that collision code. I said like I think the collision system is lacking. I'm only doing sphere to sphere collision, and like this function I put in the chat is awful. So I think I would want to revamp that. And he asked me, well, what would I do? And my answer was, I don't know yet. I would probably, my next step would be to read either online or in textbooks suggestions for more optimized collision systems, and then go from there. But my just goal at the time was to get something working so I could use it. But yeah, I think I'm probably good to wrap up now.
Alrighty. Yeah, everybody who's going to be participating in Next, especially for programming, because we're GPC, well, but everybody really. Just don't forget that the goal shouldn't be to, create the most illustrious, like, you remember that episode of SpongeBob where he like writes one letter, like, and it's like really pretty, like. Try your absolute best to write the best code that you can, but get something working, and learn along the way. Be open to learn all those things that you have to do on the job, and that's not just for Ubisoft. That's for honestly a lot of things in life. So just be open to learn, be open to criticism, and have an active listening kind of mindset when it comes to that stuff. And come to GPC, because it's pretty cool. So yeah, any other questions before we actually really wrap up?
Again, if you have any questions for us directly and you just want to add me on Discord and message me separate, that's totally fine.
Alrighty, we're gonna wrap up now. Thank you all for coming out. Thank you especially Sir Pratley and Sir Rob of Ubisoft fame. Very insightful. Hopefully that helped all of you with your upcoming submissions to Next. Best of luck, and have a good rest of your family day. Have a relaxing family day, hopefully. And yeah, make sure you start thinking.
Yeah, thanks for coming. Good luck. Also, just like share your submissions and stuff here in one of the chats. I'd love to see them. It's exciting. Okay, bye.
Alrighty, see ya.
Everyone for coming out. I'm sorry if I sounded too monotone to listen to.
No, Jacob, you were fine. In fact, you were great.
Thank you.
You sounded like a nerd.
Nick, that's